こんにちは、ゆうこ先生です。今日のレッスンは、私のオンラインコースのサンプルレッスンです。Today's lesson is a sample lesson from my online course, Japanese 2 for Beginners. In the lesson, I'm talking about casual or informal speech and how to ask 何ですか? What is it in informal speech? This online course, Japanese 2, covers many useful expressions that you can use when you visit Japan, such as how much is it? Where's the restroom? Or what time is the next bus? If you want to try sample lessons first, you can join mini course 2 and try 5 sample lessons there. Also, students who signed up for mini course 2 receive a 30% discount for Japanese 2. I'll send you the discount coupon by email, and you can use it for the first 72 hours after you sign up for the mini course. I have 4 more courses in my Japanese online school. When you sign up for the complete package, you will receive a 35% discount for all the 5 courses. Find all the information in the description box below. I hope you enjoy the lesson. では、始めましょう。Okay, this is going to be our very first lesson on informal speech. As I already introduced in the previous lesson about speech style, we native speakers first learn informal speech at home. And as we grow older, we gradually learn how to speak formally or politely outside the house. Because of this, informal speech is used by both children and grown-ups in my country, but formal speech is used by only grown-ups. This is why using formal speech makes you sound like a grown-up. It is very rare to find a 5-year-old girl who speaks in polite speech, unless she is already working in the society as a child actress or something. I usually do not introduce informal speech at this early stage of your Japanese learning because, for one, it is way more complicated to conjugate than formal speech. It is actually more difficult to learn. And for two, of course, there is a risk that you may sound immature or even rude to other people without knowing so. So please be careful with who you use informal speech to. Unless you are still a young teenager, the people that you can speak informally are pretty much limited to your family members, close friends in the same age group, your partner, and when you are speaking to young children. Other than these situations, I strongly recommend you to stick to formal speech when you are speaking to somebody, okay? But at the same time, knowing a little bit of informal speech actually may help you with listening comprehension because I know many of you watch Japanese anime or drama, right? This is the reason why I decided to introduce informal speech at this early stage. And I'm going to begin with something very simple that doesn't require you to know much of the conjugation. Okay, let's get into it. So we just learned the question word what, Nani in Japanese in the previous lesson, right? And then to ask the question, what is it? What is it? You have to attach desu ka after the word nani. This is going to be a review of a previous lesson, okay? But do you remember that when the sound des follows the word nani, there was a small sound change occurred. Do you remember that? Right. The E sound in ni disappears and the question word nani becomes nan. So the question what is it in Japanese is nan desu ka? Nan desu ka? This is the polite, formal way of asking the question what is it? Now let me explain how to ask the same question in informal speech, okay? I'm going to show you how to make the informal version of this question out of formal version so that you can apply the same method to other questions like where is it, who is it, or when is it that you are going to learn later on. The first thing you have to do is to drop the des. The ending des indicates formal or polite speech, meaning as long as you are using des in your speech, you are safe. You are speaking politely enough to anybody. But we don't use that in informal speech, so we are going to drop it. Another thing, say the question particle ka that we have here, because of course this is a question, right? It is not used in informal speech. There are a few exceptions depending on the person's gender and personality, but I'm not going to detail in this lesson, okay? Remember, in general, the question particle ka is not used in informal speech, so we are going to drop it too. So what happened now? The des that was following nan disappeared, right? Which means the e sound that we erased earlier has to come back. And nan gets back to be nani. So there you have it. What is it in informal speech is nani, nani. When you're speaking, of course, you have to use the rising tone at the end and go up. Nani, nani. When you are writing, you have to use the Western question marker, which we did not use traditionally. Japanese people traditionally used only formal language to write to somebody, but that is not the case anymore. People started writing as they speak nowadays, so the use of Western question marker is actually very common. So now you know the question, what is it, in the formal version is 何ですか? And to change that into the informal version, you drop ですか at the end and then say 何? 何? However, please keep in mind that you can use this trick only for the present tense of this question. If you are going to ask what was it in the past tense, changing the formal question into the informal question is not going to be as simple as just dropping the parts in the sentence. Okay? We are going to learn that a lot later. Okay, now let's work on the actual question like this one that you have learned in the previous lesson. What is your name? お名前は何ですか? How do you transform this one into the informal version? First of all, the honorific prefix o that we used to add a feeling of politeness or respect to a word for other people, never for yourself, only for other people. Of course, we are not going to use it in informal speech, so we drop it. And you have just learned to change 何ですか into the informal version. You drop ですか and 何 gets back to be 何. One more thing, the particle. In this particular case, the topic marker は. This applies to not only the particle は, but to other particles, but Japanese people tend to drop particles in informal speech. It's okay to keep it there and then say 名前は何? But the majority of Japanese people would drop it. So I'm going to drop it too, okay? This is the informal version of the question. What is your name? 名前何? It became a lot shorter than the formal version, right? The formal version was お名前は何ですか? The informal version 名前何? One more time. お名前は何ですか? versus 名前何? Some of you may hear this version of the question in informal speech. 名前 なんて言うの? 言う means to say in Japanese. So it's more like asking you, what do you say your name is? 名前なんて言うの? And since 言う is kind of hard to pronounce, many Japanese native speakers replace the part with 言う and go like this. 名前なんて言うの? 名前なんて言うの? This is another common way to ask, what is your name in informal speech? Okay, getting back to 名前何? And now let's learn how to answer to this question in informal speech. When somebody asks you, 名前何? Or 名前なんて言うの? You can simply say your name, Sarah. That's it. You don't say Sarah des anymore because the des is not used in informal speech. So you have to drop it even when you're responding to a question. But please keep in mind that responding in informal speech is only appropriate when your position allows you to speak to that person informally, such as you just met your new classmate who is in the same age group as you. If you just got a job at Starbucks, for instance, and the manager asks you, 名前何? Then it's not appropriate for you to respond in informal speech, okay? The manager can speak to you informally, but you cannot. You still have to stick to the formal speech style to speak to him or her, and then respond, サラです. So now you know how to ask what is it in informal speech. What is your name is 名前何? You do the same when you ask what is your job? 仕事何? And what is your phone number? 電話番号何? Just remember the phrase なんて言うの that we learned earlier is used only for asking for a name. So be careful not to use it when you're asking for something else, like what is your job, what is your Skype ID, or what is your email address. Okay, one last thing before we wrap up today's lesson on informal speech. Do you remember that in polite speech, in formal speech, you could ask the question, what is it, in incomplete sentences like this. お名前は instead of お名前は何ですか or お仕事はお電話番号は and these are still very polite, formal way of asking these questions. You can actually do the same in informal speech too. You just have to drop the honorific prefix in the beginning, and that's it. Now these are informal questions asking what is it in incomplete sentences. 名前は仕事は電話番号は So now when you want to ask for somebody's telephone number, for example, in informal speech, you know two ways to do it. You can either say 電話番号は or 電話番号何? Well, that's it. This was our very first lesson on informal speech in Japanese. I hope you had fun and didn't feel too overwhelmed. Again, the people that you can ask Nani are very limited, okay? For example, if you are going to ask your mother in the kitchen, Mom, what's for dinner? Of course, you can use Nani in informal speech, right? And dinner in Japanese is 晩ご飯. So you can go like this. お母さん、晩ご飯何? And this is completely appropriate because you are speaking to your own mother. However, if you are speaking to your mother-in-law or your girlfriend's or boyfriend's mother, please do not ask her 何 meaning what is it. Let's say you want to ask her, what is your favorite food, okay? And favorite food in Japanese is 好きな食べ物. In this case, please don't say 好きな食べ物何 to her. You have to say in formal speech, 好きな食べ物は何ですか? Don't get yourself into trouble by using informal speech to wrong people, okay? I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Japanese too comes with lots of PDF materials that you can download. It also provides self-check quizzes to check your understanding of the course content. There is no time limit to complete the course, so you can learn Japanese at your own pace in your spare time. And of course, I will always be there to answer your questions and support your learning. Find all the information about the course in the Show More section below. I look forward to having you as my student. ではまた次のレッスンで会いましょう。